All right, there we go. Thanks you everybody for joining us. This is Tips and Hacks with Skimmer, hosted by our Skimmer ambassadors. Today you've got Bryce Sarine and myself, Flavia from Skimmer. So let's dive right in. We're really excited to talk about this one, route optimization, minimizing mileage. And one thing Bryce and I talked about earlier today and yesterday was how really just a few small tweaks can make such a significant difference. So there's two things that we're going to cover today, kind of big picture. And one is route management for regular service stops, and then a few really helpful views on work orders, and then kind of how to optimize the scheduling of work orders and some ways that Skimmer can help you do that. So Bryce is going to cover this route management basics. Some of this folks may already be familiar with, but there's a few subtle things here that you can do to make things really accurate, adding actual starting points and endpoints to routes that make sense. You don't actually start your day from a customer's home. You start it at your home or at a company headquarters. And Bryce is going to show you how to optimize existing routes as well, and show you some views for kind of looking at what you've got lined up and making some moves that can minimize mileage. And then once we do that, if we have enough time, we're going to talk a little bit about optimizing work order schedules and a few views that will enable you to optimize those. The view is scheduled work and under the route dashboard. So a little preview here of what this is going to look like. Scheduled work orders, you can filter by work order types and by technician if you are getting ready to assign a lot of work orders. You can do that right here in one pane. And the other one that we'll draw a little attention to is just the route dashboard and how you can see, first of all, you can see here that I'm a Star Wars fan and that the demo account has some interesting characters in there. But more importantly, you can see by day, there's a little calendar tab, calendar banner at the top. You can select a day that you want to run work orders, and you can add them from right here in this view to the right technician on the right day, and you can assign a time, and then you can optimize it. So I will give Bryce back the screen, and we're going to jump right back into these route management basics and then the optimization of these. Go ahead, Bryce.
Okay, so jumping right into it, if the first thing that we were kind of talking about was adding additional addresses, the company addresses. So if we go to settings, general, it's here on the right-hand side, and you can add as many addresses as you want. For my own company, this is our demo account, so I just have my office address. But for my own company, I have the home addresses of all the technicians that wanted to participate, the office address. And so when you're optimizing your routes, you can click on those addresses. That'll just kind of speed up the process a little bit. Like Flavia said, it's making sure that you're actually going back to, you're actually optimizing for where you're going to end up and not otherwise just kind of guessing about it, I guess. Otherwise, when we really talk about the optimizing, the best thing I like to do is look at it under route assignments. And this is going to kind of show color coding of each technician on the inside. Then on the outside of the color of the blob is the day color. So if we pick, let's narrow it down to just a Tuesday. You can see, Cody is the brown colors. Donnie is the blue. I should really pick on Wednesdays, the day I kind of prepared for us. But you can see that we're overlapping quite a bit, and it doesn't necessarily always make sense, especially if we zoom in right here. You can see that I'm coming over here and I'm doing pulls number 11 and 12, while Flavia is just right around the corner. So probably doesn't make sense to have me come over here when she's right there. It's so easy to switch it over. We just click on it. It shows the name of the person, their address, and you can hit move right here. And just like that, now it's on Flavia's schedule starting today on the 16th. Or if you want to push it out until the 6th, you can do that as well. So that way you're like, okay, the beginning of April, we're going to have some route changes. And while I'm speaking of that, I literally just did that when Flavia and I were talking a little bit about this process, and I was like, well, I haven't done it in a while, so I should pull it up and actually do it on my own account. So I picked actually a small area. It's maybe a third of my business, but it's this really tight route that I only have 2 technicians doing over the course of a week. So I was like, this will be a small project for me to do, to actually tackle. And I did it, last night in probably, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. I went through it all and actually typed it up in a spreadsheet so I could share it with you guys as I was going, just kind of the before and after of the whole project. But before their balance, Craig was driving less than 5 miles and Ben was driving 13.8. So you can see this route is already a pretty tight route comparatively. But by tweaking it around a little bit, I added just a little bit of miles to Craig, but took off quite a bit from Ben, just by going back and forth. So, I saved 2.5 miles on a day, then 4.5 a couple. I saved a huge 8.7 miles, and then actually 20 miles with moving a pool pretty substantially out of the way. Or I guess this is the full sum.
And Bryce, can you show our pros where you pulled that data on miles driven?
Yeah. So if we look at the actual route dashboard, so I'm going to jump ahead to Wednesday the 30th. And you can see right here for his, his day, he would be driving 9 miles on that day, and Craig would be driving 14.5 miles. Whereas if we jump ahead 1 week to where I've made the changes now, it's 6 miles and 10 miles. So, I had my changes go into place at the beginning of April, so I have time to inform my customers and make changes. And something else that's kind of interesting about that too is the fact that I didn't do any huge changes. I didn't move anyone from one day to another. The only changes I did were between technicians on the same day. So you can see that if I get more bold and I actually move customers from one service day to another, I could probably do even better. You can kind of put these side by side. It's like, if we look at it side by side, the reality is it didn't change that much. And I think that's something that I really like to kind of push to, to everybody and help you guys realize is you don't have to do huge changes to really make this work for you. Just minor tweaks will actually make a difference. In this case, it was about a 20% reduction in miles in just small tweaks.
That's significant.
Yeah, especially because we're talking about such a tight route already. So I'm excited to get started and actually do it on my Scottsdale route where I have technicians who drive more than 50 miles in a day. If I'm able to tweak that back 20%, that's going to be a substantial savings for us. You can see in this case, the 20% is only about $300 in fuel over the course of a year. It's not a substantial dollar amount by any means, but I'm pretty excited to see what it does to my Scottsdale route, which is obviously going to be a lot more miles driving.
Awesome. We may put together that spreadsheet and share with folks if you'd like to plug in your own numbers and see what savings you can come up with.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting. Even when we're looking at this one, if we make this small change, it's going to be tens of miles.
Yeah.
And I've looked at my Scottsdale route since we've talked, and I see a lot of stupid stuff that I'm doing now. So, and I want to say, like, obviously we like to judge ourselves harshly for this stuff, but when you're in growth mode and you're just adding pools, you're more looking like, okay, who can do that on that day, and not so much what makes the best sense for your business.
Yep. And the nice thing is in those views, you can load balance and you can see if somebody's got like 14 pools, right?
Yeah.
Versus 9 or 10. You can keep an eye on things there so they don't get out of whack.
Yeah, exactly. And just to pull it up and this to show it's like, okay, we're literally on the same street, but there's a few houses here. So I have lots of opportunities that I can follow up on my Scottsdale route that are going to be, pretty substantial. When this is a square mile and I have 3 different technicians there on different days. So
Mm,
there's some great opportunity for us to save some miles, save some money.
totally. Awesome. And of course, we always have, which we'll show you again when we talk a little bit more about work orders, is just the route optimizer, right? Which, if you haven't seen it before, is in routes, and you can add customers based on a service day. And there's a little lightning bolt both in this administrative view and in the app view that will enable you to optimize your route. And include those starting and ending locations that Bryce mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I'll definitely pull that up. But before we leave this page, I wanted
Yep.
to show that you can also change the pin color.
Oh yeah.
That's a big deal for me. I don't, I don't see the colors so well. So one thing that you can do, I already did it on this page for myself, but you make it blue and red. The more technicians you have, the more colors that are going to be used. And if you have, light green and green get used on a technician, you might have a hard time telling those apart, or the orange and light orange. I'm looking at them both right here and I'm like, I don't know which is which. So if I
Bryce
had a,
handles all the interior decorations at his house.
yeah. So if I, if we had them both these colors, it wouldn't be as easy to tell who was who as if we pick some colors that are really different from each other. So
and
definitely
and you're
utilize that
color
tool.
coding by day of the week too, the outline. That's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. So um where's it at here? Yeah, so you can set this for each technician independently, but
Mm,
you'll definitely be better off if you can utilize the same program all the time, because it'll just make it easier for you to know when you're looking at it that, oh, that's a Tuesday pool. So um,
awesome.
yeah, but to jump to what you were talking about with the optimize, which it's like after you set up the route so it makes sense to have the pools on it that are on it, then you can hit this optimized route. And this is where we were talking about those company addresses that you can
Mm,
actually put them in here for the start and end if you have them turn in their trucks at the end of the day, or if it's your own home address. However you set that up, hit optimize and it'll do it for you.
there you go.
Perfect.
And even after the fact, if you need to switch things around, you can always do that by dragging and dropping.
Yeah.
If,
And one thing that I do personally that probably some people like to do, especially in the peak summer when it's going to be really hot out and the sun comes up at 5. So maybe you leave your house at 4 and you drive to the furthest away house
mm,
while it's going to be coolest. You basically get there at sunrise, and then so you can actually target and you can choose. Like, I definitely want to be at this house, the furthest away one for me when I start, and I want to end at my home address. You can optimize that way too, which is more of like a time-based optimization rather than miles. So you can kind of choose what your priority is going to be.
yeah.
Yeah,
And it reflects how you're actually working and the actual miles that you'll put on your vehicle.
yep, exactly.
Awesome. All right. Should we look at some of those work order views?
Yeah. Did you want to pull it up and show off what you discovered?
I think you can just pull it up in here in the demo. If you go to work orders,
You want
yeah, I want to show that view.
this scheduled or
Yeah, go to
new?
scheduled. Go to scheduled. So what I like here is if you are getting ready to do something like pool opens or pool close, and you want to assign to certain technicians for certain days, this is kind of a nice window to do that, because you can select the type of work order from that drop-down menu, and you can select a technician. So, Bryce, you can select, just myself, Flavia, and uh, you can say, coming up on March 18th, I want to add a bunch of work orders to Flavia's schedule. So right there in the right-hand corner, add work order. You can do it right here from this pane. The work order type, the customer, the work needed, the technician, and service date right here in this pane with a time if necessary, or if that's what you'd like to do. And that'll be reflected in the information about this work order, right? So save. And so you can, in this view, kind of keep track of how many work orders a certain technician is going to handle in a certain day, and edit right here if you want to move stuff around and assign it to a different technician. But I really like this view for handling work order scheduling, because one of the nuances of Skimmer is that in the life cycle of a work order, you have the creation of a type of work order, and that's in settings, and then upcoming and new work orders, which basically means they have been assigned, or they're recurring and they're coming up, but they haven't been scheduled yet. And so if you know for certain when you're going to be scheduling things, I think it's easiest to just come to this pane. So having covered that, now we can flip back to the route dashboard view, or we can talk a little bit about optimizing the work order scheduling. So you can select a date, select a technician, assign work orders, rearrange, or optimize stops, all from within the route dashboard, which is super, super helpful. So let's go to March 18th again, just 2 days in the future. And you can click me. And so from right here, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, we can add more work orders. And from this pane, and you'll see the schedule for that day for that technician. It'll say whether or not it's scheduled at a certain time. And you can kind of go through the same motions that Bryce went through before on regular route assignments. On that map pane on the right-hand side, you can select all routes. And you'll see all the different routes that are being run that day, right? So if it makes sense to swap a pin, and perhaps instead of myself going to do an opening for Joe Monroe, maybe instead of Cody doing a swap for Joe Monroe, maybe it should be myself. So similar activity here in terms of changing assignments. And you can optimize these routes again and accommodate for actual scheduled times. So, 2 views here. There's a lot to work with. It's really about your preference. I think the work order scheduled view is kind of a little more orderly for when you're loading stuff up for the first time. And I think this view is really great for minimizing mileage, right? And making those swaps and making those moves, and making sure that you're not driving any more than is absolutely necessary. So really excited to show this to everybody today. We get a lot of calls to our awesome customer support line about managing routes and minimizing mileage. And there's so many different types of work that y'all handle. And hopefully this is a way to address some of those scheduling and distance related issues. Anything else to add there, Bryce? I know this is kind of a newer hack for us over the past week.
No, I think this is awesome. You sent me the email about it a week ago, and I already kind of started to adapt it and to get my office manager to use this stuff too. Um, it's awesome to be able to do. It's so silly. Sometimes, the skimmer just has so much stuff that it can do that you sometimes just forget to look up just to
Yeah.
hit all routes instead of selected, and suddenly you can look at everything all at once instead of clicking on each person and trying to find it.
Yeah. And I love that you can add a work order from this pane. I think that's just really helpful if you're loading stuff up, or if you get a call in, you can immediately look at somebody's route and see whether you can fit it in or not.
Yeah. And one thing that my office manager does too is, we'll create work orders and they fall underneath the new category
Hmm.
before they're assigned to anyone.
Right.
So you can go through and actually assign these to someone. You can assign it to an office staff member, or maybe you have a new one that's unassigned work, a new technician or something like that. So that way you can actually pull it up on the route dashboard when you're looking at everything else, and you can really um, realize, okay, these are the jobs that still need to be assigned on this day, and we can make it happen.
Yeah. 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 So again, work orders that are upcoming and have been attached to a customer, but haven't been really scheduled yet. So there's that slight gap in terms of the life cycle of the work order that we have a few ways for you to address in the most efficient way. So that is minimizing mileage as the season is about to kick off. So we're happy to take any other questions, any other hacks people have, tips for how they're looking at routes and managing mileage. Feel free to drop it into the chat, or we have a Q&A function. And of course, we will send out this recording along with the slide deck after we're all done here. Bryce, I think we have overwhelmed everyone with
Yeah.
with this hack. I'm excited about it. So
Yeah, I
hopefully
know
everyone
it's a
else
lot
is.
of information all at once, and um, I got to say again, you don't have to make huge sweeping changes. You don't have to spend hours moving your routes around to save that money. You
Yeah.
can do just a handful of pools getting traded. You do that every week, and you'll probably even be more on top of it than someone who does a big massive overhaul and then they don't look at it again for a year. So um, yeah, so
Absolutely. And
definitely.
as a reminder too, if you're in the field all day and you're a one person operation, you can optimize routes from the field and add work orders from the field. So if you're flying solo, a lot of this functionality is available to you in a really clean way in the app. All right. Well, if that's it, we can close right. Oh, wait, we got one question in Q&A. When we click on all pools, will it also bring up once a month pools? I presume this question I may ask a follow-up here, if this is in relation to this route dashboard view.
If it's the route dashboard, then it would pull up anything scheduled for that day when you're looking at all pools.
Yeah.
If it's for route assignments, then it would pull it up. It pulls up everything that has a route assignment.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is yes, but if you want to clarify that question a little bit, then we'll make sure that we're on the same page.
Of course. You can always, when we send out a follow-up email here, please feel free to reply with any follow-up questions there that you might have. But yes, the routes reflect all scheduled service for that day. Whether it's a one-off, a repair, a weekly, a monthly, everything will go here if it's scheduled. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I'm also thinking about sending out a poll with a few options for our next webinar. So be on the lookout for that. And thanks so much for joining us. We will see you right here again next week. Thanks, guys.